Look at the stars. Look how they shine for you and everything you do. Yeah, they were all yellow, just like the MOCs in this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series, beginning with a bit of a cold read of a Coldplay song. But if you're feeling a little cold this evening or this morning, whenever you're watching, maybe this episode will warm you up a little bit. I don't know physically how it will, but I'll do my best. This episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series continues our trend of doing a few color-focused episodes, and today the color that we're going to specifically be focusing on is, like I said, yellow. We're going to take a look at some yellow MOCs, see what colors complement yellow, see what colors work with yellow, and see what yellow communicates as a whole. So let's do a quick Google search, as we've kind of been known to do with these episodes, and see what is the meaning of yellow. What does yellow communicate? So yellow is a color that can stand for freshness, happiness, positivity, clarity, energy, optimism, enlightenment, remembrance, intellect, honor, loyalty, and joy. But on the other hand, it can represent cowardice and deceit. So that's interesting. That's cool. We'll dive a little bit more into all that sort of stuff on each of the MOCs we show today. I think pretty much every MOC encompasses most aspects of that sort of stuff. So let's just dive on in. Let's start talking about some yellow MOCs. The first one is by Peckham and is called Ariella, Centurion of Rapa Nui. So I'm going to show some older and some newer versions of this MOC. I mainly just wanted to talk about the older version just because there's just a few more points that I wanted to specifically cover there. But we'll jump between the two just so there's more pictures that you can be looking at, because that's always fun to do. I always like looking at pictures. I'm sure you do too. So I think this MOC, with the things about yellow that we were talking about before, I think this MOC really embodies aspects of honor and loyalty. It's based off has little aspects of looking like a Roman centurion, like a soldier, a foot soldier. And I think often that sort of look can really embody senses of honor and loyalty. It's what I would describe a soldier to be, or at least a good one. I think that's quite fitting to make a soldier MOC, whether they're a sort of more modern soldier or a bit of an older, knight of some kind, making them have some aspect of yellow in the color scheme, because it can embody that sense of honor and loyalty. I think the gold helps with that as well, and also gold and yellow does work decently well here. The colors are quite close together on the color spectrum there. Adding in little hints of black too, that's also quite nice. But those colors work well here. I often mention Technic panel pieces, and we see one of them being used here as a sort of Roman centurion shield here, one of those rectangular shields. Let me show you what I mean by Technic panels. So here's a set number 8264, and it is simply called Hauler, and this came with some of these Technic panel pieces. Here they are on Bricklink. It is Technic panel plate 5x11x1. So I often talk about Technic panels and how a lot of Technic sets can come with these interesting panels and different, there are multiple different types of Technic panel pieces, but this is one of them. And I think they're very helpful for Bionicle MOCs because you can so easily use them. They have a lot of connections that work with Bionicle stuff. And really Technic is kind of the best thing we have at the moment if you want to get more pieces to make Bionicle MOCs with, that are new, modern, or just at least in shops for that matter. So here's a great use of or at least one Technic piece, one sort of more predominantly Technic piece that isn't just your typical lift arms and clips and connectors and stuff. This piece works quite well for that and is a really nice shield. I also like that he's used all these tires here to kind of fill in a lot of different gaps in some of the limbs. It just looks nice, and tires are always really helpful for doing that. It's also a great way to kind of cover up areas on the MOC that do have articulation, and if that area just doesn't look that nice, or the colors of it are kind of contrasting with the other colors on the MOC, just shove a tire over it and you should, for the most part, be able to fix a lot of your problems. Also, there's a hockey torso piece here. Now let me actually show you again what these hockey sets looked like. There was this odd sports Lego theme, which was kind of hockey based, and it was kind of a construction theme to some degree. It had these funky, cool looking hockey dudes, and you could literally kind of play little miniature hockey with Lego. And here's the set, which is called Hockey Puck Feeder. Those of you who are playing at home, the set number is 3545. It's pretty cool. A lot of these pieces you could easily translate into Bionicle or Hero Factory or whatever, and these Technic kind of torso pieces here that this MOC here uses, they're beautiful for Bionicle stuff. They're really, really nice pieces. And it's great to see one here, and it's great to see it being used in yellow. I also like the fact that he's used some of these system plate pieces here as a kind of waistcoat on this guy here. In some pictures they're tiled, in some pictures they're not. I think both work actually surprisingly well. The textures may not quite match up with more predominantly CCBS frame here with when it's not tiled. And I think also that too, the kind of armored look of these pieces and that waistcoat and the shield and everything also helps to convey that sense of kind of, loyalty and honor that yellow was also conveying. So it's nice to see the colors as well as the aesthetics and the designs in this mock are kind of working hand in hand here to communicate that loyal, strong, kind of knight-like, soldier-like look, which is cool. That's easily something you could do in your own mock by simply just using a color and kind of embodying other qualities of that color into specific things on the mock. Really, really cool. So nice work, Kyle. Man, I remember when this mock came out. When did this come out? 2012? Is that correct? 7 years ago. Woo, that's what the comments here. People have comments that are 7 years old. Man, I remember the day this mock came out too. I'm old. That's cool. Anyway, on to the next mock. This is by Shadow Gear 6335 and is called Vespa. So we were talking about two aspects of yellow. One of them was deceit. And I say that kind of in brackets, kind of in inverted commas. Yeah, I remember watching the Pokemon anime, and the minute that Beedrill came out, everybody freaked out, everyone running away, Beedrill are going to attack us, it's terrifying. And even as a kid, kind of having that fear of bees, because like, now they'll sting you and it's really going to hurt. And you're like, oh God, one's landed on my foot, what am I going to do? And so I think there kind of can be that element of deceit, or at least just kind of caution, I guess. And that is kind of another thing with yellow. You see a lot of caution signs around the world, you know. Or there is just that kind of slight element of fear, I guess, with yellow, and slight element of fear with bees. A lot of people are afraid of them, man, and they're scary. They'll attack you, they'll kill you. So I think yellow can communicate that nicely. But also, bees in the real world are yellow and black, of course, and this mock is as well. So it's also something you can do. You might be building something and you go, oh, it's very closely related or inspired or a direct copy of something in the real world, and that thing is yellow, so I'll make it yellow. And in that sense, it doesn't necessarily need to communicate anything with that color. It can just simply be, well, it's yellow, so I'm gonna make it yellow, and that's fine. You know, in a lot of these color episodes, I go quite deep into symbolism and hidden meanings behind the colors, what it communicates. But remember, there's nothing wrong with just being like, I like yellow, and I'm gonna make my mock yellow, because you can. It's within your power, it's your world, do what you want. You're the hero of your own story. And so I think this mock really effectively conveys like a bee and uses yellow nicely. You know, bees obviously have the striped yellow and black, and this mock does that nicely, especially on the limbs here, using a lot of these yellow washer pieces here and kind of interlacing them between black and then doing a bit more of them and black again, and it does create this striped look. And it doesn't have it everywhere on the mock, which I think is nice, because if it was just purely striped, it might be a bit much. Kind of just subtly putting it in there, that's pretty cool. And very much, again, represents a bee and sort of shows that off and helps to communicate that, which is the point of this mock. It's meant to be a bee girl character, which is great. I also like the kind of hairy, fuzzy, kind of striped look on this mock, using some of these tooth pieces and some minifigure hands and things here. Bees do have that interesting kind of fuzzy, furry kind of look here, and I think that very effectively conveys it. I don't know if you can hear the wind outside. It is rainy, it is windy. If you can hear that, this is an ASMR video. That's my excuse. But I like that. Bees do have that texture, and I think this is very effectively doing that. So it's cool that the yellow, of course, is instantly communicating bee, and then you add a few things in like that also communicate bee. And then, of course, you got the wings here. Bees, of course, have wings. These wings came on one of the only Ant-Man sets that we got, or at least Ant-Man movie-based sets. And this was the wings on Anthony the Ant, or Antony, as he can also be known as. Great use for using them on this bee character here. They're brilliant pieces and work perfectly for something like this. So yeah, really nice use of yellow and really nice use of things that work well in communicating bug or bee-like kind of designs here. Nice work, Brendan. Onto the next mock. This is Cernan by Mitch Henry. And you might be like, hey Ben, I'm pretty sure this mock and the last mock have been in BIS before. To which I would say, I think you're right, but I don't fully remember, but I'm pretty sure they were. And if they were, of course, I'm sorry. I like to always do my best to include new stuff. I don't like to double back so much, but I'll definitely put a mock in if I can talk about it. That's always my thing. People are like, when's my mock going to be featured in BIS, the one I submitted? I'm like, dude, if I can talk about it in an episode, right away. If I can't, it's a little difficult. And that's, of course, so subjective. You might be like, okay, well, what can I submit that you can talk about right away? And I'd be like, man, probably yesterday I'd look at it and be like, I can't really talk about it right now. And then I'll get an idea for an episode. And I'm like, what? Oh, I can talk about this right now. Actually, never mind. You know, so that's kind of hard to pinpoint. But, so yes, I apologize for featuring these mocks multiple times. If I have, I'm pretty sure I have. Maybe not. I've got so many episodes now, it's hard to keep track. Besides the point, though, going off subject here. Back on to Mitch Henry's self-mock here, Cernan. I think this mock also conveys honor and loyalty, but in a different way to how Kyle Peckham's Centurion mock did. You were talking before how that mock was a more sort of knight-like, medieval, olden-ye-olde, ancient soldier. And I think Cernan here really has a more sort of modern soldier look, these kind of stocky shoulders, Also kind of the mask too, and the guns that he's got as well. He does have this very interesting kind of almost sci-fi look, but also kind of just a more modern looking kind of soldier. As I think honor and loyalty is being conveyed here, again, in a very similar way, but a slightly subtly different way, in a more slightly modern way. And I think one that probably isn't necessarily down to the color choice, because it's yellow again. Of course, it's being complemented by red here, but I don't think that's necessarily communicating the soldier factor. That being said, though, yellow and red looks very nice. Little hints of black thrown in there too. Very cool. I think it more does come down to the textures and the weapons that he has, that sort of stuff. That's what's communicating the fact that he's a more modern soldier versus a more ancient soldier. So again, that's quite interesting to note that colors can very much communicate one thing, but the actual physical elements or aesthetics on the MOC can also very effectively communicate something. So you might be going for a very ancient soldier look, but you're like, oh, but I'm going to give him a gun. And be like, well, you might not be communicating that ancient look. You might actually need to give him like a spear and some shields or some, sticks or something, some kind of olden day, ye olde weapon, nothing too modern. And then that will really nail the look you're after. Color can only do so much. You do need other things in there to communicate things. I also think the yellow on here is also communicating an element of kind of freshness. That was one of the other things that we said that yellow can kind of symbolize here. And also just sort of slight positivity, kind of a nice friendliness to it. And I think that very much reflects Mitch Henry as a person. Of course, this is his self-mock. I think that's quite fitting that the yellow actually does, to some degree, represent an aspect of Mitch's personality. Of course, we've spoken to Mitch many times in past Bionicle Inspiration Series podcasts. He's a very nice friend and a very nice guy. And I think the yellow, or at least aspects of yellow and the symbolism behind that, does quite effectively reflect his personality, which is cool. And a clever thing to do with a self-mock. Ask yourself that. You're like, if I was a color, what color would I be? What colors would represent me? My answer to that is yellow and blue. Look at the colors of my channel. Is that a coincidence? No, it's not. Speaking of guns, this MOC has some cool guns. Am I talking about Mitch's muscles? Or the guns that he's holding? I'll let you decide. Still, very accurate, very cool, awesome sawn-off shotgun, and a powerful sniper rifle. Very nice designs there. If you're a gun fan, I'll let you go wild here, have a closer look at them. They're super cool. I have a slight appreciation for guns. I think they look cool, but I am not an expert, so I'm not going to be like, technical terms. I don't know them. Guns are cool. Mitch has done a great job of making cool guns. The next MOC here is by Joxon, and this is called CR-03 Heavy Crank. I love this MOC a lot. I think it's brilliant. And I think this very much conveys the intellect aspect that we were talking about before of what yellow can convey. And what I mean by intellect is more the fact that this has a more robotic flair to it. I think that also does come down to the aesthetics very heavily rather than what the color is specifically communicating. But both are kind of working together in unison here. Kind of because, you see a robot and you think, oh, they're probably very smart, typically like a droid or a robot or an android or something. They're conveyed as more intelligent characters in media. And so I think using yellow here can kind of complement that very, very heavily robotic look that this MOC has and communicate a sort of slight intelligent look to it. But I also think elements of like caution as well as visibility are being conveyed here. This MOC very much has a construction look to it. And I Googled, I was like, why is it that all construction vehicles are yellow? Why is that? So I Googled it, and the thing that came up is, it's been an industry-wide practice to adopt yellow as the primary color for heavy equipment. Ooh. Yellow is primarily treated as the color of caution and visibility, since all heavy machinery which is employed in the mines, the acid mines, or construction sites must be handled with the utmost care. Blah-bitty-blah-bitty-blue. That makes a lot of sense, right? This has that construction look to it. It does kind of convey a sense of caution as well as a sense of visibility, because yellow is a very striking color. And like I said before, caution signs can often be yellow, depending on where you are in the world, depending on what color you want to make them. Sometimes they're green, blah-bitty-blue. But that's being conveyed here. And that very much sort of gives this look of construction. And then we look at some of the different aesthetics on this MOC here that are also conveying that kind of construction element to it, which, judging by the name, the heavy crank kind of thing, kind of reminds me of like a crane or something construction based. I think that is the intention here, and Joxon's done a lot to communicate that. Let's break it down. Let's dive in. Let's take a bite of this juicy steak. The handlebar piece here on the torso kind of does look like the front of some sort of big heavy machinery, some sort of crane or digger or front end loader, whatever you want to say. So I think that's a very nice addition there. Kind of almost slightly reminiscent of a Transformer. You could see this guy transforming into heavy machinery thing. That in itself I think is pretty cool. Two elements here on the face. Kind of this sort of interesting grill texture that kind of forms the area where the mouth is. Those are two like snowshoes that a minifigure would wear. The kind of interesting texture that they've got on the front of them there. It's kind of great look. Kind of does look like quite construction-y, for lack of a better term. It does look more mechanical, more industrial. And I think that's a perfect texture to add there, especially on the face too, because a face obviously communicates a lot about a person. And this character is a person, right? Depending on your point of view. So I think that's a brilliant texture to put on there, and it really effectively does communicate that construction look. Also, of course, he's got these big kind of claw, crane-like arms for his hands there. Very much sort of resembling, heavy machinery in a crane or a claw or something like that, which is again communicating this. He's got the big smoke pipes on the back, again, a very industrial kind of look. He's got the caution stickers everywhere, again, it's just all feeding into the same thing. But the final little detail here that I really like is the orange eyes that he's got. To me, they kind of look like some sort of safety goggles that you might see on a construction worker. And even kind of the top of his head kind of looks a bit like a hard hat, something that a construction worker would be wearing on site. I really like that. Almost everything on this mock has a purpose and is saying something, is communicating something to really communicate and convey that construction industrial look. It's a beautiful thing, and that's why everybody loves Joxon, the popular hit reality TV show coming to you in 2022. Everybody loves Joxon. He knows what he's doing. It's some good stuff. And so I'm not saying that you need to be down to this level of every single little detail on your mock is saying something. Work your way up to that, you know? I would definitely classify Joxon as one of the best. That's just my opinion. You might think differently, and that's okay. You're allowed to. But that's what makes him the best, is everything saying something. So maybe start playing around with that in your next mock. Put something on, but before you do, go, okay, what could it communicate? And if that sounds boring, don't do it. Don't. One of the most important things about building is just to build, to practice, just to throw something at a wall and see what sticks. You don't need to sit there and second guess and question every choice that you're making. That's a surefire way to not actually end up making anything because you're overthinking it. And overthinking is a terrible idea most of the time. So there you go. I've given you advice, and then I've also told you not to do it. So you make your own choice out of that. Maybe do a little bit of it, and if it's not working for you, don't do it. Do a little bit here and there and stick to your traditional thing. See what's happening. Try some new stuff. See how it works for you. That's often a very helpful thing to do. But yeah, great mock from Joxon. Love your work. Nicely done. Next mock. This is by Logan W. and is called Kickeroh, the Yellow Warrior. So I think this mock kind of can embody elements of like cowardice or deceit. And I say that mainly because he looks pretty evil. You know, the texture on his mask, his kind of general stance there. He looks like a bad dude. But he also has elements of kind of honor and loyalty again. I think he does have a sort of more sort of like warrior, kind of ninja, samurai kind of look to him, like some kind of martial artist. But a lot of the things on this mock also communicate that he is a bad guy. So kind of maybe just kind of forming a character purely based on what I'm seeing here. He kind of looks like a sort of more noble warrior that turned to the dark side and is now studying the evil jitsu and has turned on his former masters and is trying to take over the world. You know, something cool like that, right? And so that's why I say kind of like cowardice or deceit, that this guy looks like he doesn't play by the rules when he fights, you know, because he looks like a kind of more evil character. So that's interesting that the yellow is also kind of reinforcing that. And then the much stronger kind of, probably even slightly more aspects of black in this color scheme. Obviously black and yellow, we've seen that already throughout this episode. Great color combination. That's why there's a song written after it. But the fact that there is slightly more black kind of hinting more towards that sort of shadow evil side. I think that's a nice kind of way of kind of playing with these two colors and having something communicate that the black is slightly more overpowering, but the yellow is also there behind it, showing aspects of not loyalty, because we were saying he's a coward and a traitor, but that deceit, but also slight amounts of honor as well, which is cool. I also love these kind of crossed rubber bands across his torso here. Just the general look of that texture and the shapes kind of crossing over each other, those lines intersecting. And the fact there's a lot of them that kind of go back and forth, back and forth. Again, it kind of, to me, kind of creates this backstory of the guy who started on one side and then changed sides. And maybe he's doing all these evil things, but he still has some slight honor. And you're like, what's going on? Whose side is he on? He's so back and forth. I think that's really, really clever, having an element of this mock kind of feed into the story or feed into the character design here. And it's as simple as having lines intersecting. I quite like that. Because it does that. Your eyes naturally follow those lines and they're physically moving back and forth, back and forth. And you think, oh, this must be a very back and forth kind of character, right? And you might be like, no, Cossy, it's just lines on a mock. To which case, you'd probably be right. But if we're talking in terms of character design, adding in an element like that can make you very much think in those terms. And your mind goes, oh, that's probably what that is. You take a look at a lot of character design and a lot of media and stuff, the color choices, the specific patterns and textures, they're deliberately put on to communicate that sort of stuff. It's like Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, the fact that he's wearing black clothing. It's very much making you, it's kind of like a red herring. It's like, ooh, Luke's dipping a little bit into the dark side. Is he going to turn at the end of the movie? I don't know. What's going to happen? And then the triumphant return of the Jedi happens. And you're like, no, he didn't do it. And so kind of it's communicating something. It's making you second guess. It's creating tension, that sort of stuff. So that's what I see on this mock. Whether or not that was the intention, probably wasn't. Or it probably was. Who knows? We'd have to ask Logan. Still, it's there and it's showing something. It's cool. Evil looking mask, like I said. Also, again, kind of the black and yellow here, kind of resembling the bee again. Elements of caution, being alert, kind of urgency almost as well, which I think very much fits into a sort of evil kind of character there. I really like these flex tubes here on the shoulders as well, with these ball joints around it too. It's just a really interesting thing there. You know, I don't even know what it is, some kind of funky looking armor or something, but it looks nice, it looks cool, and it just works well on this mock. And I love little stuff like that, where people add random things coming out of the back of a mock, or these funky ornate shoulders, or a weird, interesting hilt on a sword or something. It just looks nice. It doesn't necessarily serve any purpose, it isn't necessarily a thing or, you know, a functional element. It's just some ornate detailing, but it looks nice, you know? It's unique. You don't see that every day. It's cool. This might be a longer episode today, guys. Obviously, in post, I'll edit it down a bit, take out a lot of the pauses and ums and oohs and all that sort of stuff, but right now, it's a little bit of a longer one. So buckle your pants. Let's continue to dive on in. This is by Mitch Phillips, and this is called Rory. I love this guy. I think the colors are saying so much about it. And elements, too, that some of the other mocks weren't communicating. I think there's elements of kind of freshness, these really bright, popping colors, really it's quite fresh, refreshing, you know. He seems very happy, too, very positive. Kind of a nice sense of clarity. It's kind of like taking a nice, fresh breath. There's this this popping, beautiful, kind of like bubblegum kind of aspect to this mock here. It is. It's optimistic. It's enlightening. It's joyous. All those things we were talking about yellow communicating. It seems like a very friendly, in-your-face, crazy cool monster guy here. I really like it. He seems like he's really fun, really smart as well. And again, these colors really pop, and that's certainly something to factor in with yellow, and especially when you complement it with a beautiful kind of purple here as well. Yellow pops. It's a really striking in-your-face color. So if that's something that you kind of want to factor in, is having this really popping, bright, in-your-face element to your mock, yellow might be a fun choice, and if you can complement it nicely with a color like this, even better. We see one of these elves' dragon jaw pieces being used here on the head. Brilliant piece. Elves had beautiful colors and some really interesting pieces that work quite well with Bionicle, like we see here. Also, the repeated texture on here, using all these different boat studs that form this gorgeous, smooth, kind of scaly look to this animal here is really, really nice. Also, the fact that a lot of the design in this is very rounded, very smooth. It's also kind of communicating a lot of those more happy, positive feelings or emotions when you look at this mock, and I love that. I love the idea of making this almost sort of dragon-like character that's not menacing or evil, that is actually quite bubbly and nice. And I think a lot of aspects down to the textures and the colors really communicate that on this mock. It's very, very cool. Next one here, this is Ivax, the Blazing Phoenix by Ivax the Awesome. And this mock is awesome. There you go. So yellow and red can also, of course, communicate elements of fire. So maybe you introducing a little bit of yellow onto a tower of fire could be something you could do. It does make a lot of sense, right? Especially too, we look at some of the pieces here, specifically on the lower legs. These Hero Factory 2.0 fire pieces here have literally red and yellow on them. It's a perfect piece to use here on a red and yellow fire, tower of fire kind of mock. It's really, really cool, really, really fitting. Also giving this tower of fire some interesting kind of flaming wings. Flaming wings always look cool. And the fact that his name was the Blazing Phoenix, pretty fitting and perfect for a tower of fire as well. So yeah, I really like that. Just the idea of putting a little bit of yellow on a tower of fire there. Nothing wrong with doing that at all. I think it looks perfect. These colors complement each other nicely. It's really good. And final mock here. This is by Red, and this is called Migraine. Again, we were talking before about kind of how popping and in-your-face yellow can be. This is another beautiful example of that. And again, complementing it with purple, but also complementing it with teal, two more colors that are very, very visually in your face and popping. I guess that's why this mock is called Migraine, because these colors really stand out and are very in your face. It's beautiful. And there are elements of freshness, energy, really strong energy to this mock. Levels of optimism, and again, kind of intellect. Again, arguably, I see this character as a robot. Like I was saying before, robots commonly are associated with that level of intellect and smarts and all that. So I also think that's really interesting. We've seen a fair few yellow mocks in this episode that have that kind of more mechanical look to them, or more mechanical aesthetic, I guess you could say, whatever. It's certainly something to consider, you know. Do you want to build some mechanical mocks? Maybe yellow's the color for them. Also like the long limbs on this mock. You know, I've said it before, a couple of people going, oh, you know, the proportions on this mock are a little off. Its arms are a bit too long. Oh, I don't know. He's got, too long a torso, something like that. This mock has the skinniest torso, the longest arms, funky shaped legs, and it still works. It's a funky, weird looking robot called Migraine with a whole bunch of crazy colors. Looks nothing like the real world, looks nothing like typical human proportions, but it works. It's this unique and different look. It's great. And it's got a mono eye as well, and the mono eye is this funky purple Technic tube. It's great. Clever design. Love it. Lots to love about this mock, and lots to love about all of these mocks in this longer episode of Biss that hopefully isn't so long once I edit it down. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to see your own stuff on the show, you can. You can do so through the email you're currently seeing on the screen. Send me some pictures, some information, whatever you want to put in that email. Send it to me, and I'll one day put it on the show. Also, check the links in the description below to some of the other mocks that you've seen in the episode today. See what else these guys have made. They're talented builders. And you should definitely check out some of the other things they've made. They've all made some great stuff. Also, while you're there, you can see the links to my social media as well, whether that's mock pages, Flickr, Instagram, all sorts of other places where you probably will also post some yellow mocks or some minifigures which will have their typical yellow skin. You never know what you might find there. But that's it for now. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. What color would you like to see in the next color-focused episode of Biss? Let me know. I'll see what I can do. Happy building. Bye for now.